He had millions in the bank, but missed the one message that mattered most. The world knew him as a success story, but the story he never told began with a trembling voice on the phone and 6 words that shattered everything. Mom fainted. We have no food. In that moment, the cars, the suits, the luxury, all of it meant nothing, because the woman who once fed him with empty pockets was now collapsing in silence while he lived in abundance. This isn't just a story about money. It's a story about what happens when you forget where you came from, and the call that forces you to remember. And if you think this could never be you, keep watching, because by the end of this video, you'll realize sometimes success isn't what saves you, it's what nearly destroys you. He had everything a man could dream of. A penthouse with floor-to-ceiling glass that touched the clouds, watches that cost more than the car his father once drove for a living. Silence no longer meant peace. It echoed the sound of success. He was the millionaire everyone envied, but no one really knew. His life had become a symphony of board meetings, bank alerts, and business calls, each more hollow than the last, until one single ring, shattered everything. It wasn't a business partner. It wasn't his assistant. It was home, and when he picked up the phone, he heard something he'd never expected. His younger brother's voice, shaking. Dad, Mom fainted. We haven't eaten in 2 days. He froze. The world around him went quiet. That golden watch on his wrist suddenly felt like a curse. He could buy another mansion tomorrow, but he couldn't rewind time. He couldn't erase the truth that while he was building an empire, his own mother was collapsing from hunger. He tried to speak, but his voice cracked just like his soul. How did this happen? He whispered. There was no answer, just sobbing on the other end. He thought he had left poverty behind. He thought money had healed everything, but now he realized he had only left people behind. The people who once fed him when there was barely anything to eat. The hands that once held his head when he had fevers as a child. The mother who once starved silently, just so he could have a full plate, and now she was on the kitchen floor, because her son had become a millionaire. Too busy, too far, too late. He ran out of his office, tossed the luxury suit aside, jumped into the fastest car he owned. But for the first time, speed felt slow. His entire journey played in his mind like a storm. How he once promised, one day, I'll give you everything, Mom. How she'd smiled and said, I don't want everything. I just want to see you happy, and home. But he never came home. He sent money, he sent gifts. He posted photos with captions like hustle, grind, build. But the one thing he never sent was himself. And now, for the first time in years, he was racing not toward a dream, but toward a heartbreak. When he reached the old neighborhood, everything felt smaller. The broken streetlights, the rusty gate, the door that creaked the same way it used to when he was 10. He pushed it open and saw her, his mother, pale on the sofa, covered in a blanket that had more holes than warmth. His father standing helplessly. His little brother, eyes swollen, cheeks hollow. He dropped to his knees, and something inside him broke wide open. This wasn't a scene from a movie. This was real. This was now. He looked into his mother's face and whispered, I'm sorry, Mom. I thought I was winning, but I lost sight of what matters. She smiled weakly. You were always winning, my son. I just missed you. That one sentence tore through him. Because the world had praised him, news articles called him the young CEO who made it. Investors toasted to his name, but the woman who once sold her wedding ring just to pay his school fees, she had fainted from hunger. And he hadn't even known. He turned to his little brother and asked, Why didn't anyone tell me? His brother hesitated, then said, Because we didn't want to ruin your dream. Those words hit harder than anything. He had built walls of success so high, even his own family thought they couldn't reach him. That night, the millionaire didn't sleep. He sat beside his mother, holding her hand. His phone buzzed with deals worth millions. He ignored them all, because in that moment, he realized something that no bank account could teach. Success means nothing if the people you love are starving in silence. He didn't cry out of guilt. He cried out of love. because he saw how far he had drifted, and now, all he wanted was to come back home, not just with money, but with time, with presence, with heart. He called his personal chef that night and told him to drive down, not to his mansion, but to his childhood home. He asked him to prepare everything his mother once cooked for him: dal, roti, rice, tea with cardamom. When his mother woke up fully, the aroma filled the room. She smiled. He served her like a waiter, with both hands on his knees. It wasn't charity, it was honor. It was the return of a son who finally understood. No amount of luxury compares to feeding the one who once fed you with nothing. That night, the millionaire didn't feel rich because of his bank balance. He felt rich because he was finally human again. That night, the millionaire didn't feel rich because of his bank balance. He felt rich because he was finally human again. But one night couldn't undo years of silence. One meal couldn't erase the hunger his family had endured behind closed doors. The guilt didn't vanish, it grew deeper. As his mother rested, he sat in the corner of that same living room where he once studied by candlelight during power cuts. He remembered the taste of shame when they couldn't pay the electricity bill. He remembered how his father would pretend he wasn't hungry, saying he'd already eaten, when there was barely enough food for two. Now he had money to light up an entire city. But what good was that if the ones who raised him still sat in the dark? The next morning, he woke up early not to check stock prices or attend board meetings, but to sweep the front porch like his father once did every single day. Neighbors watched in disbelief. Was that really him, the man from the magazines, the man who drove off years ago and never looked back? Yes, it was him, but this time he wasn't wearing a suit. He wore his father's old shirt, the same one he used to wash as a kid. He didn't need validation anymore. He needed connection. He spent the next week doing things he thought he'd forgotten, fixing the broken fence with his dad, playing cricket in the alley with his little brother, sitting beside his mom as she cut vegetables and told stories she thought he'd outgrown, but he hadn't outgrown them. He had just gotten lost in a world that made him believe hustle was everything. In the evenings, he sat on the rooftop, looking out over the small, struggling neighborhood that raised him. Each cracked wall and faded door told a story of resilience, of quiet warriors, of parents who gave everything so their children could dream. And he knew he couldn't just walk away again. He couldn't leave this street the same way he had before, successful but distant. So he made a decision, one that would redefine his idea of wealth. He walked to the local grocery store, the same one his mom had once begged credit from, and he paid off every debt owed by every family in that neighborhood. Quietly, no announcements, no cameras, no headlines, just a whisper to the shopkeeper. Clear everyone's tabs, tell them. Someone who never forgot is looking out for them. He then went to the local school, where peeling walls and broken fans stood between children and their future. He funded new classrooms, hired better teachers, rebuilt the library his mother once cleaned as a volunteer. And when he saw the kids reading books under new lights, he didn't feel like a millionaire. He felt like a son returning to his roots with purpose. But it wasn't just about money, it was about presence. He called his assistant and told her, "Cancel the next 3 months. No meetings, no flights, no distractions. I'm staying here." And he meant it, because he knew his greatest ROI now wasn't in investments. It was in rebuilding what he almost lost. Each morning he helped his mother cook breakfast, not because she needed help, but because he needed healing. Each night he sat beside his father on the same old charpai, just listening, really listening, for the first time in years. His younger brother, once quiet around him, started to laugh again. He told jokes, shared music, even challenged him to a video game, the way they used to before life got complicated, and slowly, the house that once echoed with emptiness began to fill with warmth again. One evening, his mother took his hand and looked into his eyes. She said, "You know, we were never angry at you." He nodded, holding back tears, "But we did miss our son." She continued, "Not the millionaire, not the businessman, just our boy." He broke down. Because in chasing everything, he almost became nothing. He almost became a stranger to the very people who made him who he was. But now, he was finding his way back, not just to them, but to himself. He started writing again, something he hadn't done since college, journaling thoughts, capturing memories, writing letters to his past self, the boy who once promised he'd never forget where he came from. And this time, he wasn't writing for business blogs or interviews. He was writing for healing. One night, under the stars, he looked at his little brother and said, "I didn't become a millionaire the day I made my first million. I became a millionaire the day I realized love, presence, and purpose were worth more than any currency." His brother smiled. That's the version of you we always needed. That night, he slept peacefully, not in silk sheets or five-star hotels, but in his childhood room, with peeling paint and old posters still on the wall. And for the first time in a long time, he felt whole. That night, he slept peacefully, not in silk sheets or five-star hotels, but in his childhood room, with peeling paint and old posters still on the wall. And for the first time in a long time, he felt whole, not because the world finally saw him, but because he finally saw himself. No business award had ever made him feel this alive. No luxury car had ever filled the silence the way his mother's prayers did. And no applause in the boardroom ever matched the sound of laughter at his dinner table. But as the days passed and healing settled in, he knew something else. He couldn't stay here forever, because his story, this transformation, was no longer just about one man's regret. It was about everyone out there chasing success, while leaving pieces of themselves behind. He couldn't keep this to himself, so he did what he once never had time for. He sat with his father, his mother, and his brother, and he told them, "I want to tell our story, all of it." His father, quiet and humble, simply nodded. His mother smiled, wiping a tear. If it saves even one family from falling apart, it's worth it. So he began to write, but not just journal entries, not just private thoughts. He began writing speeches, letters, and eventually, a book, not about becoming rich, but about becoming real. And when that book was released, it wasn't titled How I Made My First Million. It was titled The Call That Broke Me and the Home That Saved Me. The world took notice. But more importantly, hearts responded. Emails poured in from around the country. Men who hadn't spoken to their fathers in years messaged him saying, "I just booked a ticket home." Women who had been living in silence wrote, "My son read your story and came to see me after 5 years." He didn't feel like a millionaire anymore. He felt like a messenger, and maybe that was the purpose all along, not to just earn more, but to mean more. He used the earnings from his book to launch a foundation, not in his name, but in his mother's. A foundation that sent monthly groceries to thousands of struggling families with dignity and no questions asked. He started scholarships for young kids from broken neighborhoods who had dreams but no direction. And every time someone asked, "Why are you doing this?" he answered the same way, "Because once, my mother fainted in a kitchen while I was busy building empires. Never again." He went back to his company, but not as the man he once was. No longer obsessed with profit margins, no longer chasing market dominance. Now, he walked into those glass towers with something else in his heart: compassion, empathy, purpose. He created policies for mental health. He added family leave for employees who needed to care for loved ones. He made it mandatory that all executives spend 2 weeks a year volunteering in real communities, not just writing checks. And when someone asked him, "Aren't you losing money with all these changes?" he smiled and said, "No, I'm finally investing in something that outlives me, because true wealth isn't what fills your bank account. It's what fills the silence when everything else fades. It's the moment your mother rests peacefully without worry. It's the laugh of a child who no longer sleeps hungry. It's the call that says, 'We're proud of you, not for what you've earned, but for who you've become.'" And that was his legacy now, not being the youngest millionaire. Not being the man in the headlines, but being the son who came home, just in time. Years later, on his mother's birthday, he gathered the whole family under the same roof. Simple food, no press, no cameras. Just love, and after dinner, his mother leaned toward him and said, "You know, I used to faint from hunger, but now, my heart is full every day." He held her hand, tears filled his eyes again, just like the day he answered that call. Only this time, they weren't tears of guilt, they were tears of gratitude, because sometimes it takes breaking to finally rebuild. Sometimes, the call that shakes you is the one that saves you, and sometimes, becoming a millionaire means nothing until you become a son again. So to every viewer watching this, ask yourself, who's waiting for your call back? Who's sitting quietly, missing you while you chase a dream that doesn't include them? And what's the point of reaching the top if you forget the ones who lifted you when you couldn't stand? Don't wait for that one call to wake you up. Make that call now. Go home, say the words, hold the hands. Because one day, success may fill your pockets, but love, only love will ever fill your soul. He thought becoming a millionaire would be the end of struggle, but it was just the beginning of understanding. Because all the money in the world couldn't buy back the moment his mother collapsed. It couldn't rewind the years he spent chasing success while his family suffered in silence. It couldn't undo the nights she went to bed hungry, whispering his name in prayer. That phone call didn't just break him. It revealed the cracks he never wanted to see, and in those cracks, he found truth. He found the boy who once dreamed not of wealth, but of making his parents proud. He found the man who once thought love could be replaced by luxury. But most of all, he found his soul again. It's easy to get lost in the noise, easy to confuse busyness with purpose. But when the silence hits, when everything stops and the only thing left is the people who waited for you, that's when you realize what really matters. So if you're watching this now, ask yourself, are you rich in money, but poor in time? Do you chase dreams while the people who matter most are fading into the background? Because one day, the calls you ignored might be the ones you'd give anything to hear again, and the moments you missed might become the regrets that haunt you forever. Don't wait for a tragedy to wake you up. Don't wait for your mother to faint. Don't wait for your father's voice to crack on the other end of the line. Don't wait to realize your wealth means nothing if your heart is empty. Go home. Say what you need to say. Do what you need to do. Be who you need to become, not for the world, but for the ones who loved you when you had nothing. Because legacy isn't made of numbers or trophies. It's made of moments. Quiet, ordinary, beautiful moments that live forever in the hearts of those who matter. He was a millionaire, yes, but what made him whole again was a single decision to answer the call and never forget what truly makes us rich.